Hundreds have died in a Syrian chemical attack as even impartial experts allege false flag. Naturally, what the mainstream media refers to as Syrian activists promptly accused the President Assad's government of conducting the attack that killed numerous women and children. It says here 200 people were killed, 3 a.m. local time. It said even though it was their own chemical weapons warehouse in Damascus that was uncovered just over a month ago. And also, let's not forget about all the buildup that I've been talking about, and like probably in about the past week, saying look out for a chemical attack. So here we go, and this is the biggest thing, biggest one since the whole invasion by these foreign mercenaries backed by Western powers. So I'm not looking for credit or kudos. I'm just trying to say that in these reports, I'm able to see the big picture here and almost see what's going to happen. But a lot of times I can't. With Syria, I'm kind of nailing it, but with Egypt, I don't know what the hell is going on, you know? It's just, to me personally, I don't think that their Muslim Brotherhood proxy, Western proxy, was being anti-Syrian enough. And they basically wanted a regime change. They carried out a coup, and that's what happened. Syrian army says no use of chemical weapons in Damascus countryside. It said here that these allegations are completely baseless and untrue and that they are part of a dirty media warfare on Syria. The statement said that the allegations of terrorist gangs and the channels that support them about the Syrian army's use of chemical weapons constitute a desperate attempt to cover up the defeats they are suffering on the ground, and that these allegations reflect the hysteria, disorder, and breakdown. They called upon those who bear arms against the state to turn themselves in to authorities before it's too late. Russia calls Syrian chemical weapons use claim provocation, so they said here it's premeditated provocation. Syrian opposition is only beneficiary of chemical attack. That's what geopolitical analyst Patrick Hennison said to RT. It's obvious that the Syrian government does not benefit from the latest attack in Syria, while for the opposition it would be a key to unlock airstrikes and a bombing campaign over Syria, a la Libya, or let's say Jordan. But he's right. He usually has good analysis, and I agree with him that there's no motivation for the Syrian government to do this when they're basically winning, as long as they keep going here. But remember me talking about how the Syrian government had called on the United Nations to come in and inspect the last chemical attack by the opposition, mostly foreign mercenaries, that they carried out against civilian and government officials. And they called on them to come and inspect that one specific area that was hit. Well, they didn't do that. They kept dragging their feet so that they didn't have to go and inspect it, because they would have found out that it was actually the rebels and that the Western democratic nations are supporting. So they basically said, well, we're going to inspect the entire country, so then they can just pin all kinds of things onto the Syrian government instead of the terrorists. Of course, the Syrian government said, well, no, we're not going to let you full access to the country. Just go and inspect the attack site. So just Monday, right? Just Monday they started UN chemical weapons inspectors to start work in Syria on Monday. So coincidentally, they finally start to do it, and now there's a weapons attack, right? Kills 200 people. That, of course, has been blamed on the Syrian government. So he just sweeps over. I said that they were going to come out with it. They're going to come out and say, oh, well, there's no evidence, right? Right? It's like a police investigator going 3 years, 20 years after, 15 months after a crime has been committed, go on the crime scene and say, well, there's no evidence here, you know? And that's exactly what they did. But they even went a step further and just carried out another chemical attack. I mean, whoever these people are, they're completely insane and ruthless and heartless. And I would say the people that carried out 9/11, which I think are Zionist Jews, they're personally responsible. I know there's all kinds of factions that gain from that, but you really have to be heartless to do stuff like this. UN Security Council to hold urgent meeting on Syria chemical weapons claims. So now they're going to hold an emergency meeting. Maybe they can get their no-fly zone, right? The head of the Syrian National Coalition told reporters in Turkey that more than 1,300 people were killed in the alleged attack. But it says here the video that's been posted shows lifeless bodies, mostly with no visible signs of injury. So there was also an article I saw on Newser that said that it was some kind of sleeper gas where victims were saying that they just went to sleep. So, you know, they're saying that all these people are killed. So they seem to be kind of building this up. Syrian rebels threatened to attack UN troops in Golan. insists UN must prevent Syrian tanks from entering the DMZ. An open letter that says here in the Golan Heights, a Syrian rebel faction is threatened to begin targeting UN troops if they don't prevent Syria from deploying military forces into the demilitarized zone. The zone was set up in 1974 after clashes over Israel's occupation of parts of the Golan Heights. Remember, I showed videos of the people of Golan actually supporting the Syrian government, and their army. So you can see the truth here if you just keep watching here. 4 killed, many injured in mortar attacks in Damascus. So just like the mortar attack that killed Turkish civilians coming in from Syria, those were the rebels. Of course, it was blamed on the Assad government. It says they killed killed 4 people and injured dozens as the militants fighting against the government fired mortar shells at a number of residential areas in the Damascus countryside. 11 civilians, including 7 children, were also injured in a terrorist mortar attack in the town of Damascus countryside. Takfiri militants also fired 2 mortar rounds at the police hospital. So there you go. Salafi terrorists kill Iranian journalist near Damascus. So documentary author and journalist has been killed by foreign-backed Salafi terrorists in the Syrian capital, Damascus. That wasn't the first time that this has happened. Basically, journalists getting attacked by foreign-sponsored militants in Syria. Press TV correspondent Maya Nasir was shot and killed by a militant sniper while reporting live on September 26, 2012. So I love this crap that comes out here. 40 journalists support staff killed in first half of 2013, says report. 40 journalists and backup staff were killed on the job in the first half of this year. So another 27 media deaths. But it says here that they often occurred because of the victims' work in uncovering crime or corruption. Well, the highest single country total was 8 in Syria, where journalists have been targeted by both government and rebel forces in the civil war there. Again, what does the government have to gain from not allowing the press to go in there? Well, they do allow press. Well, press that actually covers what's actually happening on the ground. But like stuff like this individual, I don't know, she's dead, so she can't really defend herself anymore. But Marie Colvin, so war correspondent, she was killed among another journalist. It says here that she put her life in danger on many occasions because she was driven by determination that the misdeeds of tyrants and suffering of the victims would not go unreported. Well, it's too bad that she wouldn't go to, like, let's say Pakistan, where the U.S. drone strikes kill women and children on a daily basis in the name of carrying out democracy, right? Well, it's just kind of hypocritical, you know what I mean? She's going along with these people, supporting these color revolutions to overthrow sovereign governments so they can allow all kinds of subversion to go on and change their culture around. So to me personally, she was a tool. But everyone hails in the mainstream media supports these regime changes as the most courageous journalists ever. I think the most courageous ones are the ones from Press TV and Al-Manar and all them that are on the ground getting fired at by these rebel snipers and getting killed and abducted by them for ransom. But I did cover the fallout from that, literally, which was that they pretty much proved, I think it was through hair follicles or something like that, that basically she was killed by a mortar by the rebels. So, but they didn't want to talk about that, Syria rebels move headquarters from Egypt to Turkey. The headquarters of the Syrian National Coalition is being transferred from Egypt to Turkey as the new administration that toppled Morsi has limited the movements of the Syrian opposition. So that's kind of interesting. So what does that mean? Does that mean the Egyptians or the Egyptian military is now going to be against the incursions against Syria? Heavy fighting as Al-Qaeda, because remember, as soon as Morsi started to say he's going to close embassies with Syria and started to put out that stance, that's when he went. That's when all this happened. Heavy fighting as Al-Qaeda attacks Kurdish villages in Syria. Syrian Kurds continue to flee into neighboring Iraq. So we just talked about all the refugees that were pouring out of Syria, the Kurdish Syrians heading into Iraq. And we covered before, just after the rebels killed, massacred like 400 Kurds in Syria, that the Kurds were ready to go to war and ready to go to battle, and they were mustering up their fighters and stuff like that. So expect heavy casualties in the next few weeks as far as the Kurds go against these rebels. Nasrallah to Takfiri militants, we will capture you, we will put an end to terror. The goal of these militants is to stir up sectarian incitements. They are not Sunnis. They do not belong to any religion, sect, nation, or people. They are neither Syrians nor Palestinians, Arabs or Muslims or Sunnis. They are murderers, and they adopt murderers' logic. Pretty good quote. General Dempsey, Syrian conflict, not military decisive. So, Dempsey, he's our buddy. He's our guy, right? Let's put him into office. So it says here that we can destroy the Syrian Air Force. So he's kind of bragging, right? But it would also escalate and potentially further commit the United States to conflicts. Now, see, you don't want that, right? Like we're talking about, you don't want American troops on the ground. No, you want to use the Muslims to go ahead and just kill each other, right? And you'll see people in comment boards say, oh, those barbarians, just let them slaughter each other. So I have a nice big Star of David that that those people can wear as a badge. You are a tool bag for the Zionists. Congratulations. Here's your badge. Coincidentally, Dempsey wants a no-fly zone, which maybe they'll get after this chemical attack. U.S. war on Syria will make Iraq-Afghan wars look like child's play, says a political analyst. So he says the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, tragic as they have been, would pale in comparison to the potential the U.S. military intervention in Syria would do. He also added, this is clearly an insane policy. Southern Iraq bombed, 62 killed, 146 wounded across the country. Meanwhile, controversial raids on predominantly Sunni region has continued. So, someone said in the comment board, what is this all about? Well, it's all plans are going forward, right? I never saw this before, but greater Israel's border. Look at that. Into Egypt, into Saudi Arabia, into Iraq, Syria, Jordan. What's the point that I made, right? These Free Syrian Army guys, I think they make up kind of a minority of the opposition in Syria. It's mostly foreign terrorists who call themselves jihadists, which they're not, because I've covered this before. The actual former Al-Qaeda that was fighting it said that, hey, there's been no jihad that's been declared officially. So these guys are just being paid, which makes them mercenaries. But I said, why are you doing this, Free Syrian Army? If you're killing your own people, all these civilians, you're fighting alongside with terrorists. Why don't you just stop and at least let the dust settle, recover, to have some healing going on, and work together, maybe even with the government, to get the terrorists out of there, and then maybe try to bring, if you want to go back to war again. Didn't do it, but it's just like it doesn't make any sense. You're just making the situation way worse. But they asked the question, what's the point of winning this war if there's no Syria left? Well, maybe that's the goal, right? A greater Israel. So I guess you could say the Free Syrian Army, don't be Zionist tools. So speaking of Zionist tools, we have Turkish Prime Minister Israel behind Egypt's coup. So every time he needs some support from people, most of his people that are anti-Israel, anti-Zionist, he puts out quotes like this, Israel behind the Egyptian coup. So he says, one person says, someone called him a Zio troll, but how ignorant does one have to be to blame Israel first for the Morsi regime, and then when it's overthrown in a coup, Israel is blamed for that as well? Well, because they control both sides there. I don't want to call them an idiot, but it's just like they're being naive to think that they don't control both sides. Someone said here that once they instituted Sharia law, that's when people revolted. I don't know. They kind of did that a long time before they revolted. The revolt kind of came way after that. Most Egyptians I talked to believe the military coup was fantastic. So, the U.S. and the EU accomplice in the Egyptian army's massacre of people, says analyst. So it says here that TQ is Washington and the EU of being complicit in fostering a free hand for the Egyptian military to embark on mass murder. The notion of democracy, even in an incipient form of one, would be permitted by the U.S. and Egypt is a delusional thing to think of or believe in, as being proven by the West's complicity in that country's onslaught against the civilians. See, again, another coincidence. Egypt court orders Mubarak released as Islamist detained. If he does go out, it'll be on house arrest, they say. And Bush's former buddy, ex-Pakistan President Musharraf, charged in Budo killing. So, Defense Ministry preparing Japanese version of U.S. Marines to strengthen the protection of Japanese outlying islands. They'll be tasked with making amphibious assaults to take back Japanese islands that have been invaded by foreign militaries. Look at this, Japanese troops practice repelling an attack from the sea. So, there's lots of tanks. Israel apologizes to Japan over offensive Facebook comments. So it says here that they ridiculed Japanese memorial ceremonies for atomic bomb victims on Facebook. He wrote, "I'm sick of the Japanese human rights and peace groups the world over holding annual self-righteous commemorations for the Hiroshima and Nagasaki victims. On the flip side, one could ask why the crimes by the Japanese against the Chinese are never sought out, right? Like Nazis going on trial at 98 years old. Well, because the Chinese weren't Jews. That's why. Thank you."